Hi, welcome to the Writing Biz. I'm Laura Williams, your host, and today my guest is Carolyn Capern. She's a partner at CT Social here in Orlando. Carolyn is not only a writer, she's also a branding and marketing expert. And I've been lucky enough to meet her in real life. Today, she is coming to us from a quiet corner in the Omni Hotel in Orlando. Carolyn, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey Laura, yeah, absolutely. It's good to see you here in the Plus, and good to see everybody who's in the audience. Um, right now, I'm in the Omni because my partner Greg and I are volunteering for the Social Fresh East Conference. We're looking forward to learning from all the amazing industry leaders and writers that are going to be here. Jay Bayer, the author of Utility, is speaking tomorrow. Tomorrow or Friday, I can't remember which. So is Carolyn Capern from Likeable Media and representatives from a number of large brands. Me personally, I've been literary minded since the very beginning. My mom is a librarian. Both my parents went to library school. I grew up fancying that I could write as well as J.K. Rowling because I loved Harry Potter so much. I would still love to think that, but I'm a little less confident in that at this stage, but dovetailed off into marketing not long after graduating with a history degree, and been producing content steadily ever since.
Isn't that great, though? I mean, because I know myself, being a content writer, it just keeps the creative juices flowing all the time, ideas coming all the time when you're doing this kind of work, because you have to read a lot, different things that are going on. It's really beneficial, not just to your career, but to your mental health.
It really is, and I was actually talking to somebody yesterday and saying, I love what I do and I feel well suited to what I do, because I never really wanted to do just one thing. I never thought just one thing would be super exciting. I always wanted to be a part of what everybody was doing, learn about what everybody in the world had to talk about. So I now get to do that because I have to convey that voice.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. And it's so fast-paced and things are always changing. It doesn't get boring. It's not like trying to sell insurance or something.
Oh, good. Good God, I've had enough insurance writing to just dull my mind.
That's funny. Well, tonight, like I said, we're going to be talking about branding, and this is something that I hear a lot from writers, and I found myself, it's difficult for them to figure out how to create their own brand, and what does branding really mean, and how do you go about branding yourself. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is taking the time to understand as a writer what your goals and the kind of books that you are ready to produce. I think that's the first place you need to start, to get a clear view of what you need your brand to convey to people. So there's several things to branding. I think that the very first thing to do when you decide that you need to brand yourself as a writer or anything else is look at your current social media presence, and take that. If it's clean and looks good and you've been kind of doing what you're doing all along, that's great. If it doesn't, clean it up, start new accounts, whatever you need to do to get it into a professional business-like manner. To me, that would be the first step.
Well, yeah, and I would agree with that. You definitely want to start with what you have already. Start by taking a hard look at it. But really, the first fundamental rule of branding at the end of the day is just know thyself. Right. It's all about what you feel that you best want to convey. And usually that does start with just an examination of where you have been. If you have been in a place that doesn't feel quite right, then maybe you haven't hit on the right brand yet. If you're struggling to gain readership and keep a readership, maybe your brand isn't quite in the right place yet. Maybe you're putting out a message that people either aren't relating to, or that isn't consistent with what they find when they actually get into your books. I actually have an example of this right now. I'm working with an author who has thought of herself as a romance novelist, and she is, but her books are really more along the lines of a historical fiction writer. So there's a little bit of a mismatch in her brand. And it's not so much a visual thing as it is a fundamental essence of her novels and books kind of issue, and how they're being presented to the public.
Right. The thing is, if you can put it into a more narrow niche, it actually, people think that limits you, but it actually gives you more to talk about. Because just having, let's just say, just having a presence on social media is not building your audience or your brand. It's, if you may have 300 Facebook followers, but if all you're posting to your Facebook is, you know, pictures of sunsets and what your kids did that day, that has nothing to do with your brand. You have to really kind of figure out exactly what you want to put out there. You know, do you want to, you don't want to narrow it down to one book unless you know that's the only book you're ever going to write, because you may want to write, you know, 5 or 10 books, but they may all be in a historical fiction, so you need to take what parts of that you can use overall to drive all the smaller pieces.
Exactly. You can have themes that become apparent throughout all of your works without narrowing yourself to one niche, or you can narrow yourself to one particular niche or genre, and go from there. It can often be easiest to brand someone who's an expert in one genre. I'm not going to lie, that is the most straightforward way to go. If you have, like, I'm a historical fiction writer,
right,
or I'm a business writer, or I'm a writing writer, you know, that.
Oh, we lost Carolyn for a minute. She'll be right back. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but she's absolutely right. You have to really think about who you're trying to reach and who you want to be as a writer as much as anything. You know, do you want to be known as a romance writer? Do you want to be known as a historical writer? Do you write all different kinds of things? What if you write books that have to do with gardening, and you write fiction, and you write sci-fi or something like that? So that's very hard to say, okay, this is the only thing I'm going to do. So then you want to brand yourself as a writer and use that as the vehicle for the rest of it. Hi, welcome back.
Thank you. Gotta love hotel internet.
I know, right? But yeah, so I think the very first thing to do is really sit down with a pen and paper or whatever and figure out what your focus needs to be. What are you going to try to accomplish with your brand? What are your long-term goals? What you know, it's as simple as let's say if you're a young adult romance writer, you probably don't want a really dark, gothic-y looking website, even though that's what you like, because it doesn't speak to
vampires.
Right, but exactly, but it doesn't speak to your brand always. So think about the feeling that people will get from reading your books, and then consider that when you're going through your design process.
Exactly. It needs to be, and you know, one of the things that's worth noting about when you start into a branding process is looking at simple consistency issues. Specifically, one place to start is not the imagery, which is the first thing that everyone's mind jumps to: consistent logo, consistent profile picture, whatever. All those things are definitely important. But one often overlooked element is the name, the links even, in your URL. Is that going to be the same across your website or across Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest? Are you using 5 or 10 different names to represent yourself on all these platforms? The more consistent you can be across platforms, the more easily your audience will be able to follow you from platform to platform, which is one of the main purposes of branding yourself for an online world. Have that sense of interconnectedness, that sense of they want to connect with me on whichever platform makes them happy, and they can find me easily no matter what.
You're right, and I found with authors, a lot of them will when they go to move their brand across all the different platforms, they create their brand according to that one book. So all their you know, their names, their profiles, and things like that will have to do with that book, and that's not a good idea unless you, like I said, unless it's the only thing you're ever going to write, because then you almost have to start over every time you write a book to get the name out there. Did I lose you again, Carolyn? I think I did.
No,
But so if
I'm still
excuse me,
here.
you really have to think. Oh, you're back.
Yay.
Go ahead. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, you were doing just fine. I was able to more or less keep up.
You kind of fade. Oh, okay. Okay. But yeah, think about what your Twitter handle is. Really, it's much better to have it as your name, than it is to have it as your book, because you don't want to have to go through having 12 different Twitter accounts. It's absolutely unnecessary. Get everything simple, and I think that might be one of the reasons that writers get to feel so overwhelmed with social media, is they end up with so many accounts to manage. Don't do that. Get a couple of really good ones, stick with them, and learn how to use them right, and put all your content into that.
That's spot on. I mean, I would say only if you have a series or book that hits superstar status, like we're talking Harry Potter, Twilight kind of, or very slightly below that, but really
Right.
serious national level of appeal, like bestseller level appeal.
Yeah,
Only
that you know
then
it's going to have a longevity. It's
yeah.
going to last a long time. I agree with that. Yeah.
Exactly, but I mean, that would be the only time that I would suggest having a book-based Twitter account or Facebook account or what have you, in addition to your author profile. Otherwise, your author profile that's fairly more generic, not specific
Right.
to the one book, should be it.
Now, I do know a lot of authors, with fiction will put together like character Twitter profiles, and that's not a bad idea
Oh, those are cute.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. It's really not. But just, like I said, keep it simple. If you keep it simple, it'll be much easier to manage. You don't want a whole bunch of stuff going all over the place.
Yeah.
Let me read this comment from Pamela Barway. Hi, Pamela. She says that she's asking us, having worked in corporate communications for many years before becoming a solopreneur, I find branding is often more difficult when you are a brand of one as opposed to accomplishing successful branding within a small or large business. Do you concur?
Yeah, I would personally say it's both harder and
I
because
think was go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you locked up for a second there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
would say there's elements where it'd be both easier and harder. It's easier in the sense that you don't have to go through committees. You don't have to try to boil down a large organization into a small one. But you don't have the sweeping mission or the sweeping identity of a corporation. And that's what most people think of when they think of brands, of course. So pulling that out of one person is definitely a different sort of challenge. I think it varies. Branding by committee, I will tell you from experience, is not something that is an easy thing.
No, too many opinions. Too many opinions.
Yeah.
Been there. No, yeah, and you're right. There are good things and bad things, but one of the best things about doing a small brand as yourself is that you have control of it. You can communicate what you want, so you can tell what you want about yourself. If you want to be known as the romance writer who loves to cook or something like that, you can do that. You can put all your pieces together, and you don't get that much with the larger. It gets too generic after a while.
Oh yeah, and there's a point with large brands where it has to be generic.
Yeah.
It has to be, just specific enough to be them, but generic enough to cover everything.
Another thing is, I put in the comments for the show, I put in a link to an article about cleaning up your social media. So I wanted to mention that in case anyone did not see it, that it is in there, and that's to make sure you did that. The other thing I was going to say right before that, my brain I missed it somehow. It'll come back to me. On that note, I wanted to talk about websites and how important a website is to your brand. Because to me, not just to me, to most of us in this business, your website is you have to think of it as your home. It's where you keep all your stuff, and you're inviting people to your home. So you want to make sure that it's clean, that it's looks nice, that it's well taken care of. It's it's really, really important as an author to have a good, strong web page. That being said, there are a lot of people that use do-it-yourself websites, but they use the ones that make it look like 1994. Stop it. Stop that.
Please, please, I beg you,
Stop
stop.
that. Yeah. You can find them. Find the ones. Go out and look at websites that you like. Find out how theirs are made. Sometimes at the bottom, if it's a free thing, like it'll say powered by somebody or whatever. Find the programs that look really nice. Take the time to do that. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but you learned how to drive. You learn how to read. You can learn how to build a website with just a plug-in situation like that, where it's just, what you see is what you get. So, but take the time to do it. Look at WordPress. WordPress is now, I think it's like 85 or 90% of the websites online are WordPress websites. And it's not difficult to learn. I don't care what anybody tells you. You can build a basic, nice-looking website through WordPress with a day's effort, honestly.
Yep. Yep. Some of the more technical aspects may come harder to some people, but for the most part, it's a very straightforward system.
But even a lot of those,
too.
Yep, even a lot of those, there's YouTube solutions. Go to YouTube
Exactly.
and ask a question. You can find something. And even like on Google Plus, people are so nice. Go to the communities, the WordPress communities, put your question in there, and you'll find answers. But it's the block. I don't even know how to explain it really. But the blocky websites with the divider bars, they are just terrible. Stop. Don't do that. And pay attention to the colors that you use. Yeah. Yeah, and just because you're a writer doesn't mean that you have to fill the page full of text either.
No, quite the opposite. In fact, one of the things that writers have to make peace with in the online world, I think, is the fact that for all the words you put on the page, you may get perhaps 10% of them read.
Yep.
By most people who visit your site, which is, I mean, when I first started writing for the internet, that was a serious blow, man. That was rough.
And if you're writing a large body of text and your real message is in the third paragraph, how many people do you really think are going to get all the way down to the third paragraph? So really, really think about what you're doing and think about it from how you use the internet. Do you read everything that everybody writes? Because I'm 99.9% sure that you don't. Think about how you use it and how quickly you click through and what you scan and what you pay attention to, and build your site around that. Use a lot of good graphics, not, cheesy graphics. Like, we know there's some graphic programs out there, Carolyn, that it seems everybody's using. Try to stay away from those. Go to the sites that offer free, copyright-free images, and use those for your own means. Put fresh images up so you don't look like everybody else.
Yes, it's almost comical how some of the services that we use start to make us look all the same, including, incidentally, WordPress themes. The selection of that can be very important, too, because a lot of people stick with the ones that they can most easily find in the WordPress library, and there's so many more out there that will make you look so much more unique, even if other people use that theme.
Exactly.
Websites like Theme Forest offer a wide range of themes that are always getting updated.
Yep. And especially there's a few very simple ones that are always in their top recommended, and people think, oh, simple is going to be much easier for me. It's really you're still putting the same amount of information in there, so why not get something that has a better layout, that offers you a little more opportunities to change things, and just spend some time learning it and getting it right. Because to me, I ran into one yesterday, and it was a company that had been around quite a while, has to do with writers, and I'm just looking at their website and going, oh my God. And they told me they'd just gone through a redesign.
Oh goodness, that's the worst, when they tell you we just designed this website, just launched this website, and you look at it and you said, oh, I thought this was 10 years old.
Yeah, you just want to pat them and say, oh, that's okay, honey. Pam's
it's
also
fundamentally important because nothing really has the power to speak louder than your website. Your website is the one property on the internet that you actually have the potential to own.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
you have to think about it this way. If you're getting started and you say, oh, a Facebook page will be good enough for me, or oh, a Goodreads profile will be good enough for me, none of those things are true, because you have to think of it in light of what happens if Facebook shuts down tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if Twitter shuts down tomorrow, or any of these other social platforms? Yes, that's statistically unlikely. Yes, that's probably not going to happen. But if it did, would your fans know where to find you next?
Exactly.
And that's the fundamental question, and you never want to take that for granted as a writer.
Yep, exactly. You're so right about that, and you need to really think. You want things to be what you can control. You want
Yep.
it. This is your business, and you're building a business through your website. You want it to be something that one you can be proud of. And two, the other thing is, you may be a brand new writer and you might not even have published your book, but you want your website to look like you're a successful writer,
Exactly.
because that's what's going to turn people on. They're going to start taking you seriously. Believe it or not, before they ever talk to you, hear a word of what you're going to say, they get that image. It's no different than going to a bar to meet somebody. The first thing you notice across the room is what they look like before you ever speak to them.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. Pamela was also asked two more questions. She said, I do agree with your assessment, i.e. branding by committee can be frustrating. However, it's a support structure of a communications department that I find I would appreciate in the implementation of branding.
Well, that's a fair point, because then that brings up the question of, do I need a professional designer to make my brand? And the answer quite possibly may be that you do. It's not, similar to what we discussed with the websites and the themes all looking the same. It's easy to create logos and things like that look all the same across brands. And there's times when it may well be worthwhile to make the investment in making your brand look as professional as it should be.
And that's a very good point. And if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself and you don't have the money, wait until you do. Even if you need to do a crowdfunding campaign for your book so that you can come up with the money to do these things, because putting really bad websites up there's no good reason to do it. Your information isn't that valuable on a bad website, so it's better to not have one at all.
Yeah.
And wait until you're ready.
For short periods of time, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you can put together about $150, you can put together a halfway decent website.
Yeah. And I don't mean not have one at all, ever. I meant at that time till you get one. I should be clear on that. I don't want anybody coming back and saying, well, Laura said I don't even need a website, because that is not true. I would never say that. That would be so bad. Oh, my goodness.
So well.
Yeah, no, I would have some people yelling at me. Okay, I think we pretty much beat up everybody about websites and what they should and should not do. Now let's talk about your brand going outside of your website, going out to other places, and how you can use what your brand should look like on your different profiles and how you should use it. So you want to go ahead and speak to that first, Carolyn?
Sure. Well, that's a good one to look at too, because regardless of the importance of the visual logos and the website, your brand at the end of the day is like that graphic you put in the event indicated. It's what people think of you, and if people aren't thinking of you at all, well, you don't have much of a brand, do you?
Right. Right.
So the task, once you've got this brand concept figured out, this ideal for what your goal is and what your identity is and where your web presence is to go out and connect with people. And some authors take a purely broadcasting approach to social media, which works, I think, if you are Neil Gaiman or Terry Pratchett or J.K. Rowling, and you can tweet anything and have it be retweeted 1,000 times before it's been 5 minutes. But for everybody else, which I imagine are most of the people watching this show, I would say that the most important way to get your brand out there on social media is to be the person representing it. I think there is a value to having people run social media for you. I would be very bad at my job if I said that was not the case. But I also believe strongly, more than anything else, in the power of your own voice and your own brand.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
And,
there has to be some type of organic engagement.
exactly. And
Right.
authors develop just this incredible intimacy with their readers. Readers who finish one of your books probably feel like they know you. And social media has the power to take that to so many new levels. When there's nothing quite like being a reader and getting a tweet back from your favorite author. And you can really, if it's informative, you can ask them questions, or if it's fiction, you can relate to the characters and things like that. It's very, very powerful stuff. And it has more capacity to build an audience when someone knows that you interact. And by the way, the social media pieces, I believe, should be more integrated into writing books. Like if you're writing a nonfiction book, for example, including Twitter questions for your audience with a hashtag, right, and your Twitter handle at the end of chapters. Just to get the conversation going. Using those kinds of prompts could be really effective for writers in developing a social media audience, especially if they already have a readership of some kind.
Sure, and if you sit back and you think about what you can do in social media, a lot of people they don't get it because they just really don't sit back and think about it. Let's say you wrote a book on historical romance. You have so much that you can put out to your social media concerning that. You can do it on the time, things that happened during the time period. You can tweet, paragraphs as you write your book. You can put a character in either or situation and say, what do you think they should do? There's so much information that you can get out there and use that doesn't just say buy my book, because you don't want to just slam home buy my book.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
when you're doing your book launch, of course, you're going to say my book's out, da-da-da-da, and that lasts for X amount of time, and then, you do it periodically after that. But you really want to build the engagement, because it's not just you and your reader. It's you, your reader, and their relationship with your other readers. So it's more than that. So even if you have them talking about you and you're not even involved, you're doing your job with your social media stuff. So you have to just really kind of pull back and think about how can I be creative. Another one is you see a lot of book cover contests. Which cover do you think I should use, and things like that. And I think that's pretty helpful, because there's a lot of people that are particularly doing their own book designs, and I'm hoping that doing those contests keeps us from some really bad ones coming out.
Yes, one would hope, although it doesn't always work that way, I'm afraid.
I know.
Don Stevens, I don't know if you know Don Stevens.
Yeah.
He has a publishing company, and he was talking about a while ago about how they do those cover contests, and I love them. I think they're a great idea.
He was on the Indie Office Hours with Charlotte and I.
Oh, great! Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, he was on Get Busy. That's where I met him with Jim and Kit.
Yeah.
And I have to say, on Plus, I can't honestly think of an author offhand that does a better job at connecting with his audience than David Amerland.
Absolutely.
Boy,
yeah.
he really uses social media as a collaborative tool. He built most of his last two books off of his interactions with people here on Plus and on Twitter, I think.
Absolutely, and Ryan Hanley's another good example.
Another one.
Was able to get all the money that he needed through that launch campaign for his book in like 21 days, and that's remarkable.
And that's done by adding value and by really connecting with your readers. It can't really happen any other way. If they feel disconnected from you, then you're not
exactly, and being sincere. Right. He's sincere, even though he's asking for the buy. He's sincere. It's not just like, you need to buy my book. That's it. The end.
Exactly.
He tells you why you should buy it, how it will actually help you, what problems it'll solve for you, yada, yada, yada. No, that's very good point right there. Also, to that, I wanted to say that to take, when you're setting up your social media accounts, take serious time doing it, and make sure that all of your profiles match. Your bios match, that they're not all over the place. So you're getting consistent information all the way across. So let's say if I have an author who's a favorite of mine, and I say, you know, you should check them out on Google Plus, and my friend says, oh, well, I don't do Google Plus, or do they do Twitter? Well, yeah, they do Twitter, but she's going to get the same information that I get and see why that author was so attractive to me and what, you know, I thought they could provide. It's really important to make sure that you're consistent, and it'll be easier for you in the long run too.
Absolutely. Absolutely true. And you know what? I would say that to anyone who's, sorry, I got a little background noise here. I would say to anyone who has a hesitation about social media for their readership because they're afraid of the time commitment that's involved, which is pretty common. People say, well, I gotta be, you know, you gotta be consistent across social networks, and that means I gotta be on Facebook, and I gotta be on Twitter, and I gotta be on Plus, and I gotta be on LinkedIn, and I gotta be on Pinterest, and all these things. And it starts to sound like too much. It's because it is. And at the end of the day, it's better to do 1 to 2 of them really well than to do all of them terribly. So
no, absolutely.
Don't be afraid to pick and choose.
Yep. So you just think about your audience. Who are you trying to reach? Well, who's best? You know, who's what type of audience would read your books? I mean, like I would personally say a nonfiction book. I myself would drive through Google Plus and Twitter.
Yes, most likely.
Okay, but a fiction may be more. The thing is about Facebook, you may have, you know, let's say 500 or 1,000 followers on Facebook, but a lot of those are not people you don't know. So that you're going to burn through that pretty quick when you're trying to sell something such as a book. Yes. You need to think about where you can get new people. Yes.
Unfortunately, these days, Facebook too often requires that you consider an investment in ads in order to be effective. So you have to be prepared to make that investment. Unfortunately, these days, you can't reach enough of your audience at a time on Facebook. You just can't.
And another thing to consider too is if you're not comfortable setting up your social media accounts and making sure that they're correct and right, that the graphics are right, consider hiring somebody to come in and just set your accounts up for you if that's all you need, and show you the easy way that you can do it every day, where you spend a half hour a day or even an hour a day, just depending, on getting your message out. Somebody can sit down and show you all that, and they don't have to manage your accounts all the time, but they can actually develop everything for you and have it ready for you. And that's worth every penny. It honestly is.
Absolutely true. If you can make sure it's done right the first time, then your life will be so much easier going forward.
Yep, absolutely.
There are lots of people who will not charge super exorbitant rates in order to make that happen.
Yep. And another thing I want to mention too is don't put out the exact same information all the way across. You know, vary it a little bit. Put the information that you're sending out on your, you know, that you write for your blog if you have one, change it up a little bit and push it through Google Plus, Facebook, or Twitter or whatever. Don't make it the exact same message over and over, you know, the same headline or whatever, because you may have people that cross you on the different networks and they're just seeing the same thing over and over. You want to be a little bit creative with it.
That's right, because eventually those people will start to wonder, why on earth am I following her on Twitter when I'm following her on Google Plus, and I get what I need from that and more so.
Right.
Because, you know, you don't have a character limit.
Yep. And don't be afraid to be personal. Just don't be too personal. I mean, they don't really care. I mean, they may care that you're taking a trip to San Francisco to research your new book. That may be interesting, and what happens during that journey. They're not necessarily, you know, interested that you went to the grocery store today, or that, you know, any of the you know, common type things that we do every day. They probably don't care that your kid got a good report card. So to have some type of social media for yourself on the side, but don't run that through your business. You have to think of it as your business. Your brand is your business.
Yeah, my personal inclination for writers would be to say, use Instagram as the personalizing social network, because people can follow you there if they want to, but Instagram is kind of understood as, you know, you can post business-related stuff on it, but a lot of people stick to the classic, let me take a picture of my lunch, let me take a picture of the conference I'm at, or the place I am, or
Right.
my grandkids, or whatever.
Right.
And that can create a deeper sense of connection, and it can strengthen a brand, but it's not branding. And that's the distinction that you have to make. Am I
Right.
using this for branding and marketing purposes, or am I using this for personal, and if it winds up being a branding thing, then so much the better kind of purpose?
Right, right. You just have to use your good judgment.
Yes.
But really, try to stay away from it, because it can, it screws up your message. You want whatever, I read something the other day, and I can't tell you where it was from, so I'll just kind of explain it to you. But it was about an author who was writing a book about that had to do, one of the characters was a chef. And so they were saying that this person that authored the book, the recipes and things that were mentioned, that's things that they could push out through their social media. Find recipes that have to do with that. The areas that the book was placed in, there's just so much that you can do, and it's all part of your brand. But the very beginning, going back to the very beginning, what you really need to do is sit down and define, and just make lists. And it's going to take you a while to do it. Define who you want to be, who your best self is that you want to put out there as your brand, and then decide what you can do to develop that brand. What pieces of information can you use to develop that brand? If you're doing a book on social media, you want to have all the different aspects of what parts. Social media is a very broad subject, so what part of social media can you speak to? Is it, are you an expert on Twitter or something? But just decide, really narrow it down to what you're wanting to post for it, and put a list by you to make sure you kind of stay on message. You don't want to get too far off and get people confused about what you're doing.
Exactly. And yeah. I guess my one final note there would be, once you've established a brand, or if you've already established a brand, don't be afraid to revisit it over time. Your brand may evolve as you evolve as a writer. It's just the nature of the beast. And while you shouldn't be changing it once a month or anything like that, if you revisit it every 6 months or every year or something like that, you'll make sure that your brand stays consistent with who you are, and that you stay consistent with your brand.
Exactly. And more projects that you do later on, if you do additional books or anything, it'll be much easier to get that information out there, because you'll already be considered an expert in that field, and you'll be taken more seriously. So if you work really hard in the very beginning to make sure that you're staying on message and get what you need out there, it'll pay off. It'll really pay off in the end. Another thing, going way back to the beginning, I wanted to say is, once you figure out your branding and what it's going to be, then you can start working on your marketing plan, which we're not going to really discuss now. But your marketing plan is important. That's where you figure out how you're going to get your word out. I'm not just talking about online either. I'm talking about speaking events, book signings, anything. All that's part of your marketing plan. But all this information that you gather when you're trying to figure out your brand and how you're going to build it can be used to flesh out your business plan, to build your marketing plan off of, and we didn't even mention this, to be used to write your bios. Your bio is extremely important.
Yes.
I mean, really sit down and write it. You don't want it super long. You just want to make sure that you have the information you need to get out there. Show it to a few people. Make sure that they think, we all see ourselves differently than somebody else does. Make sure that it's actually communicating what you need it to say. And another thing, too, on your website, before you put it live, have a few people look at it and see if you're really, hitting the mark on it.
Yes,
so,
definitely.
Yep. On that note, Carolyn, we are going to wrap it up. I appreciate you so much for coming on today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I know it was kind of a technical feat for you to be able to do it from the Omni, but I appreciate it.
More so than I expected.
But, yeah, we'll think we got out a lot of good information today, and I will see you again soon, of course. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. And next week, oh my goodness, I forgot what that. I'm taking some muscle relaxers, so I think it relaxed my brain. But we are doing something next week, and I will put that in the comment feed. Oh my goodness, that's funny. But yeah, thanks a lot, Carolyn. You have a good night. Tell Greg I said hi.
Thank you. I will
All right.
pass that on. I look forward to seeing you again, and thanks to everyone in the audience for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I'll see y'all later.
Take care.